Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, or good morning, depending on where you are. My name is Bruce Kelly, the modeler known as Kelly. If you listen to the podcast, The Modeler's Life, I'm going to be your host for the next few hours. We have a lot of good presenters in the next uh, presentation coming up. We've got right now Mike Corley, who's going to do a presentation on rooftop details. Mike began his journey with trains when he was obviously 5 years old in the Lionel set, which most of us are pretty familiar with. It's the same story. In 1968, his wife gave him a HO train set for Christmas. And he focuses on operations and learning how to build a layout. Over the years, he's had 4 layouts, participated in the construction of the Texas Western Railroad, a model railroad club in Houston area. He attends clinics by Dave Frary. I'm lousy with names here. So Brian Nolan, Foscale, Malcolm Furlow. These clinics gave him the confidence and the skills to begin creating craftsman style structures, models, and scenery and making them look real. Mike lives in Ganbury with his wife, and he enjoys fly fishing, cooking, and please welcome Mike Corley.
Howdy, folks. I am Mike Corley. I'm also known as Frisco Mike because I love the Frisco, and my name is Mike. So anyway, today we're going to talk about roofs. Pretty interesting topic, and one that is interesting to me because, when we look at our layouts, we look down at them most of the time. And we're always looking at the roofs. And I noticed on the layout that everything looked pretty good. Scenery was good. Models were really good looking. The equipment. But the roofs were, shabby, weren't very realistic looking. So I started really looking at that in my models and tried to include that. So today I'm going to share some of the things that I've learned. And hopefully by the end of this session, you'll at least know what to do. Sadly, I don't have time to teach you how to do it, but maybe another time. So let's get started and see how we're going to get this objective. We're going to talk about what you need to get started, what kind of roofing materials you need, and then roofing details. Here on the right, you see a prototype structure, which the prototype photos play a very, very big part in working on your roofs. You can see this one has standing seam roofing, and it's got a new piece in there and rusted and molded, and it's got all kinds of things going on with it. So having a prototype photo really does guide you. So by looking at this photo, we can see all kinds of interesting stuff. We can see that this roof is a wood shingle roof. Actually, it's a pretty decent roof. The lines are very straight. It's got a smokestack. It's got a little board horizontally there to support getting up on the roof. And there may be guys tied to that smokestack. You can look over here, and it appears that they either have long pieces of metal or long pieces of wood. And then here, it looks like maybe there's some tar paper or a roll of roofing. So this picture tells me a lot. It says, okay, this is probably in the 1800s up to 1940, steam locomotive. Looking at the things, I don't see any electrical lines. So this gives me an idea of the region. This is obviously in a logging area, and it tells me the era. And that's going to dictate what type of a roof and what type of roof details that we have. So where can you find prototypical roofing sources? And that's you can go on the internet if you have access to the internet, and the sky's the limit. There's all kinds. You can Google for anything and find them. My favorite is Shorpy and Shorpy.com, and Google Earth, and I zoom way in and I can find out what kind of roofs they use in a particular region or an area. Of course, you can have subject matter books, periodicals, and a great source are the library books. And also the libraries often have an online service where you can go in and research particular topics, and you can find a lot of good pictures of roofs there. If we look at this prototype picture up close, you can see that this building looks like it's kind of road hardened, put up wet. It's got corrugated iron or steel roof. It's got also one that looks like it's rusted. Over here on the right, we see a more modern standing seam type roof, corrugated perhaps. And you can see that we're in the mountainous area. Trucks are, 40s, 50s style. So that kind of sets us in the area. Now this one in the era, this one has electricity and phone lines. So it's obviously a modern picture, but the old structures and the old details remain the same. Roofing materials, roofing materials that I've seen in prototype photos that I've used in my models have been wooden shingles, asphalt shingles, rolled roofing, corrugated metal, standing seam roofing, gravel roofing, and slate roofing. Here's a photo of an old structure. It's an old theater that's now Masonic Lodge in Granbury, Texas. And it has a modern roof on it, though, and that's a white rolled roofing that's got asphalt aggregate on top, and it's been put down with tar. Has pretty long strips. It's about 3 foot wide, and that's important that you don't put too wide of rolled roofing on your structures or it doesn't look real. So 3 feet, 36 inches, 48 inches are probably what I would aim for. So if we look at some of the materials that are available, here's a slide. Apologies to anybody's pictures that I got from the internet. If I knew who you were, I'd give you credit. But here's some different types of shingles. You got Campbell's rolled roofing shingles here. I mean, paper shingles. You have shingles here that are already all set and ready to glue on the building. You have paper shingles down here that you trim and offset and put them on. Here's laser cut wood shingles, and then another set of paper shingles. So, to simulate wood shingles, the sky's the limit. Here we see our good old favorite Campbell structure with Campbell's aluminum roofing that's been weathered heavily. And this is a prototype picture I just threw, and I thought this was a lot of fun to see the different years. If you go down here to the bottom, it looks like there was a brown asphalt roof. Then they went to green. Then they went to rolled roofing. And then they put corrugated iron on top of that. So that's a storied and historied roof. I wouldn't do every building like this, but a building like that every once in a while, an appropriate location, might be kind of fun to do. Here's another model that has rolled roofing placed on it. Here's another old structure that has corrugated iron with new iron on it, as well as old rusted iron. And corrugated iron rusts in many, many different ways. So it's really a challenge sometimes to model it. This is an interesting roof. It was one that went on Sheepscott's Cat's Head Pier on the elevator structure, and it was made by using 200 grit wet and dry paper, spray painting it flat black, and then using green chalk to go over it, and then the edges were highlighted with a black marker. So this doesn't look brand new. It's definitely old and has been in the weather for a while. So that's some of the different material roofing types that we're going to take a look at today. Classic is wooden shingles. These shingles are pretty long in the tooth, I'm afraid. They probably don't keep much rain out. But the interesting thing is the color. And that's a discussion for Hal. But you'll notice most roofs have very straight lines of shingles. And so in our models, if you put down crooked lines, it's not going to look as realistic. So sources for these shingles, once again, you can get them in a roll from Campbell and other companies probably. The Wild West models make a printed page. There are all kinds of vendors. I don't want to stop anybody, but there are many vendors who make shingles that are supposed to look like regular old wooden cedar shingles. You can also even get individual cedar shingles, and those can be a challenge to put on, but they are beautiful when they're finished. If we look at these models, they've done a really nice job with the shingles on Grandma's house. Here's another one. You can see that it's kind of staggered, and that's a style that was used really quite a long time ago. And this looks like it's a paper shingle structure, but once again, you'll see they're pretty straight and they look pretty good. So back to rolled roofing. Once again, this is that same old structure. It's got some more details on it though, and we'll take a look at those later, but you can see a lot of exhaust pipes strategically located. Here's another old favorite of mine. Another one that started out with wood, then had green, and then had the red on top of that. And you can see some of the shingles laying on the ground. Once again, not every building would look good done like this, but boy, that's interesting with the horizontal stripes. And that can be a little bit of fun too. So rolled roofing, once again, here's some different manufacturers. This one is a printed one, photorealistic. This one is, it looks like it's maybe homemade, pretty rough, pretty heavy. And here's another one that is printed, I believe by the same company as this one, but with a different color. And up here you see a roof that is a little bit different. It's kind of like a board and batten type roof that was probably used in a lot of areas. Wouldn't think it'd be too airtight or watertight. You can get the rolled roofing from, once again, from vendors. Sandpaper plate sprayed flat black. Adhesive labels, you can use those as rolled roofing, just plain paper. You can make the tar lines visible or not visible. This structure right here was made with press apply folder labels, sprayed a grimy black or painted grimy black from Flocal back in the day, and then applied and then used a Tamiya type glossy black marker to go between the tar strips. So that's a technique that's pretty cheap as a way to do it. Here's another one that's has very thin lines, tar lines, but obviously a tar type rolled roofing. Also some nice details on this roof with a clothesline and a basket and some wood piled up. Those are the things that make roofs interesting. Corrugated metal. This is probably one of my favorite roofing types, besides wood roof, shingle roof. Once again, you can see the corrugated metal is rusting in different ways. I used to think that it was nailed on one side and that side didn't expand when it contracted and from heat and cold, and then it chipped the galvanizing off, and that's what rusted. But here, you know, with this is like it was a roller when it was rolled off a press, caused some breaking down of the materials. There's one sheet that is solid rust all the way down, and one that doesn't look as old as the others. If you're building new roofs, you probably don't have any rust. So you can certainly overweather. Sometimes, in fact, most of the time, less is really more. Here's another rolled roof on the right. Rolled roof, corrugated metal roof. And then here's one that's been used and done very nicely on an old structure on the awning. So that's another nice looking detail. Oops, I think I messed up. So sources, I'll just say Campbell style. There are a lot of manufacturers for that. Northeastern, you name it, everybody's got the metal type Campbell's roofing. Paper, I've seen corrugated metal represented with paper, aluminum foil, plastic. Northeastern, I think, has plastic, and also carved from wood. And a lot of folks in the DIY mode have used molds or even a comb to use to mark and indent aluminum foil and make their own roofing that way. The next type of roofing I want to look at is standing seam.
Mike, you stopped sharing your PowerPoint.
Oh, I did?
You stopped sharing your slides, yeah.
Thanks for the tip.
That's okay.
Well, that didn't work.
No, it's okay, just put PowerPoint up.
Okay, are we back?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. Did you see this one before?
Yep.
I think that's where we were when it died, yeah.
Okay. So this is Campbell style corrugated roofing. They're probably the oldest manufacturer of it. There may be some older ones, but I just use their name because it's a common style. Many companies make it, Northeastern, several others. Also paper, I've seen paper, corrugated metal, aluminum foil, plastic, and wood. And a lot of folks have made their own by using a comb to emboss the aluminum foil. And that doesn't look too bad either. The next type of roofing I want to talk about is standing seam. You'll notice a lot of the roofing that I look at is sort of southwestern or southern type roofing because that's the area that I model, and that's what I like. I think you'd probably see more slate and things like that up north. But standing seam is pretty popular down here. Here's a building, once again, we looked at earlier with standing seam with a new panel replaced. Heavily rusted, you can tell by the nails and mold and everything. This is a pretty old structure. Here it is placed on a model and rusted. And then this is another version that someone's put on. Probably in the prototype, there weren't these big gaps between the seams, but used once in a while, that can add a little bit of interest. Standing seam, this is Brett Gallant's photo from Sierra West. Beautiful roofing there with a standing seam and then tarred roofing and different types. And you can get standing seam from all the regular commercial vendors for roofing materials. You can also make them out of paper, and you can make it out of aluminum foil or find it made out of aluminum foil. Gravel. Gravel really became popular in the mid last century, a little bit before that. Usually they put tar down and then put the gravel on top of it. And I'm not sure what the purpose of that type of a roof was, but it's pretty common. While we're at this photo, let's take a look at some of the other details. If you're a modern modeler, you'll see air conditioning units. This one's very neat in that it's got pathways to air vents and cyclones. You can see all types of exhausts and things around in this building, and even a part of the building structure that's made covered with something else. It appears to be rolled roofing. So anyway, a building can have lots of character and uniqueness and add a lot of fun to your layout. Remember I said pictures are important. This is a picture that I think I got it from Shorpy. And you can see all kinds of roofs here, but especially gravel. And this is from the 1950s, based on the types of cars, the 40s and 50s. And you can see there's a lot of gravel roofing. And you can see the details. There's a skylight. And those are really good if you light it from underneath. And if you do night scenes on your layout or structures, you can see that skylight shining through. So this building has gravel. This one has gravel. So you can see it was very popular roofing material. Back here we have some in the mid-century. In fact, it's still used today. Gravel, you can get it from all the commercial vendors. You can use coarse sandpaper to represent it as well. It makes it a little more uniform looking. Sometimes when you apply the glue and then sand from some kits, it's a little bit large for the scale. So you have to watch that. And sometimes I've replaced it with just sandpaper and painted it and used some chalks and other things on it to give it some character. So that's it for the types of roofing. And I think that if you have those types of roofing, you have a good start to variety and what really looks real. As you can see in that last photo, there's a lot of types of roofs that were used. Tarred roofs on that gymnasium-like building, asphalt shingles, wooden shingles, and gravel. So let's talk a little bit about putting details on top and what that can look like. This structure has got a whole lot of detail going on. You can see you've got the good old boys up here having fun or resting or just getting away. They entered through this structure here, which is a doorway. You can see chimneys. You can see an exhaust stack. You can see a sign. You can see some pigeons. You can see pigeon poop everywhere. You can see some trusses from the building. There's a lot going on this roof, and that's what makes roofs interesting. Here's another view of the one we looked at earlier, and you can see this roof had like a water tank. It's out of view, but a water tank on top. Here that you see patches to the road roofing, and that causes a little bit of character. Here is a roof on a logging camp structure that's done with individual cedar shingles. Tedious, but they have a pretty nice look. You'll also see the plates around the bottom of the chimneys, and you see guy wires. Those always add a lot of interest. And here's a ladder. I mean, they had to get up to service things on the roof, so there's a ladder there and a ladder on the side of the building to get to that point. Over here you see another chimney, probably for personnel. So this happens to be a kitchen. So those are the chimneys for the kitchen. Here's a structure with a gravel roof, and it's got a ton of detail. Water tanks, wooden water tanks, steel water tanks, skylights, ventilator cyclones, people walking up on top of the roof, a sign once again. So you can begin to see all the character that details on a roof can add. Unfortunately, we often tend to put too many details so it doesn't look realistic. So if you have a photo to go by, you never have the problem of putting too much up there, unless you're making a caricature of something, and then, sky's the limit. Here's a nice looking roof, rolled roofing. It's got a nice nest with a pigeon there, a little bit of pigeon poop here and there, and a sign. In certain periods in the U.S., and I'm sure in other places, signs on top of the buildings, that's how they advertise. They didn't have the internet or many periodicals or newspapers, and so they advertised on top of the buildings, identified who they were and what business they were in. So this is a really informative model picture here. Here's another one. I'm sure many of you have seen Stuffy's Brewery, the kit, and it's got a lot of detail: wooden barrels, ladders, water tanks, the structure to access the roof. It's got a light, a sign, tanks, tubes, cinder blocks, electrical lines. It's got a lot of stuff, and every bit of that adds a lot of characters to a structure. I really like this one. I don't remember where I got it, but I liked it because it showed action. All too often we don't put enough action on our layouts or in our scenes. Somebody coming in or going out of a building, somebody working on the sidewalk. And here's a great one with them working on the roof, putting tar down. It looks like you have a supervisor over here based on the clean hands. And then you have the workers over here putting the tar down and rubbing it down. Up here, of course, there's a light, chimneys. This appears to be a roundhouse. So there's a lot of detail on that. So put action into your roof if you can do that every once in a while. So details on roofs. This is a drugstore, and this scene you can see from the front view is a pigeon on the roof with some poop. Unfortunately, the poop also looks like chips in the plaster, but this was real pigeon poop there. And you can also see a TV antenna. If we go over here, you can see that there is a chimney for the heating system. There was a ventilation system, so this probably had a grill in it in this drugstore. There's another vent back here in the back. Once again, the TV antenna. And used to, at least in my time, when I grew up in the 40s and 50s, antennas were everywhere, especially in the 50s as TVs became more popular. You saw them on almost every structure. One year, my dad and I were taking a Thanksgiving basket to a needy family, and we didn't have a list or anything. So we just went to an area and said, we will go to the first house that has, sorry about that, folks. The first house that has no antenna. Well, we couldn't find one. Everybody in the 50s had a TV antenna. So one more detail up here, you can see there's some wooden boards and a little bit of water collected over a period of time, and mold is set in. You can see that all around the periphery there. You can see there's a patch on the roof. There's another patch here that you can't see really well, but it's there. And this is rolled roofing with tar strips. So details on the roof add a lot of interest. Speaking of details on the roof, look at this shot in the 50s. Look at the signs. Every one of those structures has a sign on top. You go to a small town, they had a brick building or even a wood building with a flat roof. There was a sign on top of it. And nowadays, from a lot of vendors, we can get lighted signs, and that adds a tremendous amount of interest if you do evening operations, night operations, or just want to light it up during the day. So signs on the roofs are an important thing. I used to think some signs, I'd see some structures, and I'd say those people are crazy for putting so many signs on top. And then I ran across this photo, and my goodness, I was wrong. There are a lot of signs on top of those buildings. So wrapping it up for roof details, the detail ideas are smokestacks, air conditioning units, TV antenna, birds, skylights, roof doorway, signs, rust, ladders, paper, guy wires, an action scene, patches, repairs, lights, walkways, or nothing but a shingle. Most places had at least one exhaust stack for a restroom, so you might have at least one, but there's nothing wrong with having nothing at all. But every once in a while, it's fun to add details. So we looked at how important prototype photos are to guide us in our work, knowing what region you're in. I showed you a little taste of Texas today, mainly. Also, what area you're in. They changed roofing, as you can see here, over the years, sometimes expediently and sometimes because that's what was available. We looked at the different roofing types that you can put on your structures, and those are based on what era, what region, and the prototype picture that you're using as a guide. We talked about a few material resources for reference photographs and buying materials or making materials. We talked about how action scenes really add a lot of interest to the top of our structures. And finally, we learned that less can be more. So that's really about it in what to do about roofing, not how to do it. I hope this at least gave the experienced folks some ideas and newer modelers some ideas and helps where to start and where to begin as well. Any questions?
Oh, Mike, thank you very much for a very informative presentation. As an employee of Campbell's Scale Models, I'd like to say thank you for the free plug, and I'll talk to Duncan to see about getting a check out to you as soon as possible.
Send roofing.
Yeah. Oh boy, that's tough right now. I've got one question. Is there a timeline for what eras you should use certain types of roof?
Yes, and I can't tell you right off the top of my head what they're still using corrugated iron today. I see them putting it up around here in farm structures all the time. Nowadays, they're using steel roofing is very, very popular in many shapes, including the terracotta type roofing, but it's made out of steel. Mm-hmm. So I think that wood, if I build a structure that's 1940 and back, if it's a residential structure, it's probably going to have a wooden roof on it. When I grew up, wooden roofs were changing to asphalt shingles. That would be in the 50s. And those remain in residential to be very popular today. And that's what's on this house. And a lot of times it's building codes dictate what type. So the timeline really, what I would do would be to go search on the internet using a search engine and say rolled roofing when it was invented or something like that. Right, and then you can see when it first came out, and it's still in use today, as you saw by that Masonic Lodge that had rolled roofing on top. So, a lot of them are timeless, but there are certain things that the use of them changed. Corrugated metal went from a primary roofing material to more of a secondary. Wood has pretty much disappeared, except in high-end residential houses that have a lot of fire insurance. So that's about all I can add to that.
Okay. Another question was, how long did the length of the roll of the roofing come in usually?
I've seen it in 100 feet. I've seen it in smaller 50 foot, and I've 300 is about the biggest I've seen, but you'd have to have a crane to lift that up on a
Right.
roof.
And I know the corrugated that we make at Campbell's is from 4 to 12 feet long.
Yes. And that's what I say.
Yeah.
The 30 on roller roofing, 36-inch wide to 48 inches are the two most common sizes that I've seen. And, you know, a lot of it depends on where you have to lift it up, what you're going to use. And a lot of times it's price point, what's cheaper.
Okay. All right. I think we've finished on that.
Okay, great.
So thank you very much for the presentation, and hope to hear from you again.
Okay. Enjoy the convention, folks.